From a stalker in the walls to something sinister lurking in the closet. These are 4 chilling apartment horror stories that will keep you up at night. Story 1. The mystery of the growling. It all started with a low growl. At first, I assumed it was just a large animal like a dog or perhaps a cat. However, as time passed, the growls persisted, becoming a nightly occurrence. I even began hearing what sounded like screams in the middle of the night. My roommate, Lauren, also started noticing these sounds, and we began discussing them over dinner one evening. She mentioned she'd heard similar growling noises when she lived in her parents' basement years ago. It turned out that their basement housed a litter of feral cats that had been making the noise. "So you should check your closet," she suggested. I didn't think much of it at the time. However, when the growling continued for weeks on end, I decided to investigate. After removing all my clothes and accessories from the closet, I pulled the rod away from the wall, only to find a small gap behind it. What was this all about? Was there a secret passage behind my closet? Feeling uneasy, I decided to call my landlord, Mr. Henderson, to inquire about the possibility of someone living within the walls. He arrived promptly, and we stood side by side before the closet. As he listened intently to the growling sounds coming from the other side of the wall, his face grew grim. "I'll have to break the wall open," he stated, reaching for his toolbox. With the help of a crowbar, he pried open the wall and discovered a hidden room filled with hundreds of dead rats. Apparently, the previous tenant had kept exotic animals as pets, which had eventually found their way into the walls and subsequently died. Since then, the growling noises had been the result of the rodents' decomposing bodies shifting within the walls. The sight was truly disturbing. In the following days, my apartment was filled with the stench of decay. Despite my landlord's efforts to clean it up, the odor lingered. The walls were torn down, but the damage to my well-being was done. I couldn't bring myself to enter the apartment again. To make matters worse, my landlord refused to return my security deposit, citing extensive repairs and professional cleaning as reasons for the deduction. Although I understood his perspective, I felt the situation could have been handled more fairly. As I received my last month's rent back, minus the security deposit, I couldn't help but wonder why my landlord didn't simply deduct the cost of repairs from my rent instead of taking my entire deposit. Regardless, I was pleased to move into a new place that weekend, but the unsettling experience still lingers in my mind. Perhaps one day I'll be able to shake off the fear that has been haunting me ever since. Story 2. The stalker next door moving into my new apartment seemed like a dream come true. The rent was reasonable, and the location was perfect, just a stone's throw away from my workplace. Plus, it came with a parking space, which was a rarity in the city. However, my excitement quickly faded when I realized I had a stalker living next door. It all began with subtle signs that someone was entering my apartment when I wasn't home. At first, I dismissed these thoughts, assuming I was simply forgetting to lock the front door. But as time went on, things escalated, and I started finding items in my apartment that I never placed there. Common sense told me that someone was sneaking in, but I couldn't fathom who it could be. My apartment building had secure entry, and I never saw anyone lurking around my floor. Each time I came home, I would frantically search for clues. And while nothing concrete ever surfaced, I began to feel a sense of unease and vulnerability in my own home. The constant worry took a toll on my mental health, leaving me on edge and questioning who I could trust. Then the creepy notes started appearing. I discovered a note tucked under my door one day, written on paper with black ink. The message simply said, "You look beautiful." While it could have been a prank, the fact that it happened several times sent chills down my spine. These weren't the actions of a person seeking a casual fling. It was clear that this individual was infatuated with me to a disturbing degree. In a moment of panic, I contacted the police, hoping they could help me uncover the culprit. But as they stood in my apartment looking for clues, I realized how futile it was. There were no signs of forced entry and no physical evidence to suggest who could be behind this. The officer suggested that maybe I knew someone who might want to do something like this. But as I thought about my neighbors, none of them stood out as potential stalkers. This only added to my paranoia, as I wondered if the person next door was watching me without my knowledge. I decided to change my locks immediately and started keeping my windows locked at all times. But even these precautions didn't ease my anxiety. I continued finding small items scattered around my apartment, leading me to suspect that the stalker was always near. Fearful that the situation might escalate, I contacted my neighbor, hoping to find some answers. When they opened the door, I was met with an apologetic smile. Didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard what happened. So I wanted to say, don't worry, you're safe here. It's just a bunch of nosy teenagers looking for fun. They probably won't bother you anymore. Relieved but shaken, I thanked my neighbor for their support. Yet as I returned to my apartment, a sense of dread settled over me. Could I really trust that nosy teenager's assurance? The truth was, I felt vulnerable and unsure how to regain a sense of security in my own home. Story 3. The mysterious black box in the bathroom. I was thrilled when I found an apartment that met all my needs, a decent price, close to work, and a spacious layout. However, my excitement soon turned to confusion when I discovered a strange black box in the bathroom. It was about the size of a shoebox and made of a material I couldn't identify. Initially, I thought it might be a faulty electrical outlet cover, but I was sure it hadn't been there before. Concerned about potential electrical hazards, I reported it to my landlord, but he seemed unfazed by the discovery. "Ah, that old thing," he said dismissively. "It's just part of the building's wiring. Nothing to worry about." His nonchalant attitude did little to ease my concerns, and I couldn't help but feel uneasy about the mysterious box in my bathroom. It was then that my friend suggested I contact a paranormal investigator. Intrigued and desperate for answers, I agreed. Upon arriving at my apartment, the investigator examined the black box thoroughly and even used a thermal camera. "This is unlike anything I've ever seen," he finally stated, his face etched with concern. He explained that the box seemed to be emitting a low-energy signature, but its purpose remained a complete mystery. According to him, the only way to find out was to open it, but doing so could potentially release whatever entity it was containing. I was skeptical, but intrigued enough to give it a try. As he carefully pried open the box, a musty odor wafted out, followed by an eerie green mist. Suddenly, the room grew frigid, and I felt a ghostly presence envelop me. Startled, I watched as the investigator recoiled in surprise. "We need to close it immediately," he exclaimed, rushing to seal the box. As he worked, the temperature plummeted, and I shivered despite the summer heat. Just as he snapped the box shut, a disembodied voice echoed through the room. "Leave this place now." With trembling hands, the investigator nodded curtly and quickly departed. Later, when he processed the audio recording, it became clear that the voice belonged to a woman. The investigator theorized that the box might have been used as a portal, allowing spirits to pass through. Though I initially dismissed it as a far-fetched idea, I couldn't deny the unsettling events that had transpired in my bathroom. Story 4. The Woman in the Closet. After months of searching, I finally found a reasonably priced apartment near my workplace. Excited to move in, I didn't pay much attention to the musty smell or the outdated appliances. I was just happy to have a place of my own. However, that happiness soon vanished after hearing strange noises in the middle of the night. I couldn't quite make out what the sounds were, but they seemed to be coming from my closet. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. But when the sounds persisted, I began to worry. One night, I woke up to what sounded like muffled screams coming from inside my closet. Terrified, I reached for the phone and dialed 911, but before I could speak, the sound stopped abruptly. The operator asked if everything was okay, and I told her I just heard some strange noises. "Stay on the line," she instructed, but by the time the police arrived, the closet was silent. They found no signs of intruders or any other disturbances, and advised me to call back if the problem persisted. Back in bed, I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it had probably been a one-time thing. But as the nights went by, the noises returned every time. I'd be fast asleep when suddenly I'd hear scratching and muffled voices coming from the closet. Unable to take it anymore, I decided to confront whatever was in there. I opened the closet door and shone my flashlight inside, but it revealed nothing. There was just my clothes hanging silently on the rack. I closed the door and went back to bed, but the next morning, I found a small hole in the closet wall. Concerned about the structural integrity of the building, I called my landlord, who promised to send someone over to fix it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the hole and the strange noises. As the days passed, the noises continued and the hole seemed to grow larger. One day I was home alone when I heard the unmistakable sound of someone crawling through the hole in the closet wall. I froze in fear as I heard footsteps approaching my bedroom. Then I saw a pair of feet in the doorway. "Hello," I called out hesitantly. The footsteps stopped and a moment passed in silence. Then the feet started backing away, and I heard the sound of the wall being pushed back into place. I never saw anyone, but I never forgot the terror of that day. The experience left me shaken and questioning what exactly was hiding in the closet and why it had been trying to contact me.